And the next headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast is the house where AC/DC was formed has been accidentally destroyed. That's right. I said accidentally destroyed. Last week on the show, I mentioned that the Morrison Hotel in LA, which was the famous site of the famous Doors album cover, Morrison Hotel, burned down. This was previous to the LA wildfires. And of course, we're sending out a lot of good vibes and a lot of positive thoughts to the people that have been affected by the LA wildfires. Thinking about you here on the Rock News Roundup podcast. But last week on the show was mentioning that the Morrison Hotel burned down, which is kind of speaking to the loss of important rock and roll landmarks, and not just rock and roll landmarks, but important landmarks in general. Some are protected, some aren't. And then I guess in this case, even if they are protected, that's not going to stop a property company from destroying the house, which in this case was the site of the formation of one of the most famous rock bands of all time. This is according to exclaim.ca. An Australian property company has accidentally demolished the house where AC/DC started in Sydney, Australia. AC/DC was formed in this house, as well as the Easy Beats. Now, if you're not familiar with the Easy Beats, that was a 60s band that featured the brother of Angus and Malcolm Young, George Young. He was in a band called the Easy Beats. They had a big hit back in the 60s called Friday on My Mind, which is an absolutely classic, amazing song. So if you don't know the song The Easy Beats, or the band The Easy Beats, and the song Friday on My Mind, highly recommended that you check that out. And then, of course, there's that AC/DC connection. So these bands were formed on 4 Burleigh Street, which was in Sydney, Australia, still is, which was the home of the Young family after they moved in in 1963. I think they emigrated from England. I might be incorrect on that, but I believe they emigrated from England to Australia. And this house was recently purchased by a property company for a few $1 million, not a cheap price. And then after they purchased it, they swiftly demolished it, claiming that they didn't know the cultural and historical and musical significance of this house, which was the place, the formation of AC/DC and the Easy Beats, one of the most famous musical landmarks in all of Australia. And actually, this home where AC/DC was formed is listed on the National Trust list of historic homes. But I guess the property company was not aware of this fact, and they claims that the owner, who owned the house for a very long time, I guess after the Youngs moved out, they did not inform the property company that this was a registered home and that this was a protected house. But then actually, according to this article from Exclaim, homes that are even registered in this trust, being registered in this trust does not prevent the houses from being knocked down. So I'm wondering what the use is of something like this to be included. Yeah, you could be included in the historic homes registry, but that's not going to prevent you from knocking it down, which makes absolute no sense. But the good news in this situation, even though this house, this building has been demolished and is lost forever, the company that did this, the property company, has apologized profusely, and now they're vowing to make things right by building a special AC/DC monument using materials from the demolished home. So at least there's something happening here to make this situation right. Obviously, there were some major oversights that happened here. I feel like this is such a shame because it's another rock landmark destroyed. Like I said last week on the show, even though it was a derelict building and it wasn't really being used and really wasn't really maybe as in a current legendary state as we know it from the Morrison Hotel album cover, but losing that building as well, it's just totally just a total loss for rock music fans that they lose this building. And I'm thinking, like, why didn't the property company know about? Like, did the property company, do they hate AC/DC? Do they not like Thunderstruck? It's a great song. Who knows what's going on here? But this is absolutely a loss for the people of this rock community in Australia. Like, imagine if they tore down one of the Beatles' homes in Liverpool, like John Lennon's childhood home on Menlove Avenue in Liverpool. Like, if they tore that down, and that's a registered home, Yoko Ono bought it and donated it to the National Trust. So, like, it's a protected home. Nothing will ever happen to that home, thankfully. But if something happened, people would be up in arms. People would be majorly upset if something like that happens. So, and this is not really, when we think about it, a lot of homes eventually get knocked down. This is I understand, the march of progress. Like I mentioned in the last episode, the march of progress continues. I understand sometimes these things need to happen for things to progress and for new buildings and new structures to be built. But a lot of famous homes end up getting replaced by monuments. Like, for example, the Beach Boys house in Hawthorne, California, the home where they were raised, the Wilson brothers, the home where they grew up in Hawthorne, California, that was knocked down in the 1980s to make a freeway. And that wouldn't be the only house that was knocked down to make a freeway. Just in this instance, it was the Beach Boys house. It was the house where Brian and Carl and Dennis Wilson grew up, and really is one of those formative sites where some of the most famous rock and roll musicians and music was made. So as time goes on, we're going to continue to see these rock and roll landmarks and just landmarks in general kind of maybe fade into history, which is really a shame. And it's just like, even if they're protected in this situation, this AC/DC house was registered as a historical landmark. That did not stop them from knocking it down. And really, somebody should have said something to this property company that this was a house of significance. There were so many oversights. I'm going to get into politics here. So many oversights from the owner of the house, the municipality, the property owner. I demand answers. I was thinking after reading this story, I was so up in arms that I was like, should I study property law to prevent rock and roll landmarks from being demolished? Is that my calling in life? Probably not. But if I had the money, then I would go around the world and protect all these landmarks from being destroyed, but I don't. Unfortunately, I can't stop these property developers from destroying the home where AC/DC was formed, where the Easy Beats were formed, and where these historical things were happened, where music was made that changed the world. That is not under my purview. That is above my pay grade. But hopefully we will not see any more rock and roll landmarks or really important places of note in general destroyed by property developers accidentally. So we'll see what happens.